The obvious question to ask if you're someone in my position is, how the hell do you start something like this? Your first video on your brand new YouTube channel, especially a channel that's going to be dedicated to something like film discussion and analysis. A vastly oversaturated market as it is already. And yeah, it's easy to get in your own head about something like this. There are a lot of very knowledgeable voices on this platform, very entertaining people with unique perspectives and insight into film and television. And I'm not going to act like I scoured the internet in search of some way I could take their approach and spin it. But if you're anything like me, and I'm fairly certain I'm not alone, you may be starting to get fed up with online discourse these days. Specifically when it comes to film and television, or just art in general. To put it bluntly, there's a lot of negativity out there. It appears more and more that when it comes to art criticism, we kind of live in a binary world. On one end, you have masterpieces, the greatest thing you've seen in years, absolutely changed your life cinema. And on the other end is absolute dog shit that isn't worth one iota of your time. I've been observing this phenomenon for a few years now, and it increasingly makes me more and more upset. So upset, in fact, that I decided to make a whole YouTube channel dedicated to dismantling this approach. I'll offer up a story to help illustrate what this channel is trying to achieve. A few months ago, I was on a job, and one of my coworkers was talking to another coworker, and I overheard him talking about the new Roadhouse remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal. So I butted in and asked him what he thought of it, having not seen it myself. And his response kind of irked me. It was everything that enrages me about film and television discourse these days. He said, and I quote, "I had a lot of fun watching it, but it was terrible." I felt this compulsion to press him on this point because surely those two things contradict one another. How could something be terrible and a lot of fun simultaneously? Especially when fun, i.e. entertainment value, might be the ultimate goal of a film like Roadhouse. Why does any film owe you more than that? I'm not saying that the ultimate goal of Roadhouse was to just purely entertain, but what I'm saying is that I felt like he didn't pick his words carefully enough. And this leads me to the larger point, which is the title of this channel, Cinema Wellness. And look, I'm not a spiritual leader by any means. I'm hardly even a spiritual person. But what I am is someone who knows that he loves art. I love storytelling. My first love in this world was cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
And I see so many folks who, like me, dedicate enough of their time to watching films and discussing them that I have to deduce that they have some level of passion for the art and the craft and the business of cinema. And yet I see these same people raising an incredibly high bar of expectation and standard onto something that, to my mind, only has two major jobs, as well as some other smaller optional ones. Number one, entertain. Number two, tell me something about the human condition. It doesn't have to be something epic or something that reinvents the wheel of human emotion and consciousness, but it just has to speak to something that's applicable to someone's life. Notice that I didn't say to all of our lives. These things don't have to be universal. And yet, I'd argue again that these messages, these themes, motifs, lessons, whatever you want to call them, are more universal than they might appear on the surface. I'm going to go out on a hugely unpopular limb here and say that every film I've ever seen ticks at least one of those boxes. And you might be out there furiously typing on your keyboard, what about Madam Web? What about The Room? What about Battlefield Earth? Whatever. This channel's goal is to make a strong case for cinema. And when you love movies as much as I do, you don't make exceptions. Now, hold up, you might be saying, Josh, are you implying that you've never disliked a movie? Obviously not. But, and here's an important distinction, I've never seen a bad movie. There are no bad movies. I'll say it again, there are no bad movies. I know, it sounds fucking absurd, but hang in there for a second. What are we really saying when we say a movie is bad? Are we implying that it shouldn't exist, that it never should have existed in the first place? And I could already see people getting smart and being like, what about snuff films? You think that those should exist? Shut up. I'm obviously not talking about that. Are we implying that there are absolutely zero redeemable qualities about these films? And just to interject, how often are we letting our own biases cloud us from seeing the bigger picture of a film's impact on humanity? My God, you must think that I sound so pretentious. I'm self-aware enough to know how all of this sounds when I say it out loud. But if you walk out of Madame Web and you call it terrible, awful, waste of time, think for a moment about the little girl who saw Dakota Johnson in her costume and knew what she wanted to be for Halloween this year. Or who discovered her love of sitting in a theater with a bunch of strangers and watched some flickering lights on a screen for 2 hours. That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say there are no bad movies. I've always been fascinated by the sheer passion people have for movies. We eagerly await new releases, we debate plot twists with friends, we endlessly quote our favorite lines from movies that came out decades ago. Yet, despite this deep love that you could see within people, I also see us setting these impossibly high standards and tearing down films that don't meet them. It's almost as if we've forgotten why we fell in love with cinema in the first place. We should be celebrating the wonder and joy that movies bring us, not reducing them to a checklist of perfection. Every film, regardless of its flaws, has the potential to entertain, to inspire, and teach us something new. Every movie is some person's first time learning something, whether it be about themselves, about humanity, about grief, about love, about the unknowable cosmos beyond. And when you say it's bad, you imply that those lessons, those feelings, those emotions are not valid within that person. By criticizing cinema so harshly, we undermine the very art form we claim to cherish and risk stifling its growth and evolution. When we say things like, they don't make good movies anymore, we fall into this trap of nostalgia or something, forgetting that every era of cinema has had its highs and lows since the very beginning. This fallacy blinds us to the innovative and heartfelt work that's being created to this very day. So if we truly want cinema to thrive for generations to come, we have to foster a positive and nurturing discourse. So what is this channel? Is it some place where I hope to reveal the silver linings of so-called bad movies? No, not even in the slightest. It's a channel that aims to reintroduce that spark, that original passion for cinema into the discussion. It's a channel that's going to give every movie the benefit of the doubt, regardless of how many slowed down, reverbed covers of pop songs might be in the trailer. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a new trailer come out and all the comments are just, oh, I can't believe they added a slowed down cover of Heart-Shaped Box by Nirvana or some shit like that. I have my theories as to why all of this discourse exists, but I'll save that for another video. On this channel, I aim to make reviews and discussions of films and filmmakers old and new. I'm straying away from the typical video essay format, but I'm also not leaning too heavily into the YouTube film reviewer format either. It's going to be kind of loose and ever evolving, and we're going to change with the times, and I'm curious to see how you all respond to it. That being said, in the spirit of positivity and wellness, why don't you go ahead and, in the comments, let me know the last great movie that you saw. Whether it be in theaters or at home, old or new, what's something that you watched recently that either entertained you or taught you something about the human condition, or both? For instance, mine would probably be The Bike Riders. I loved it. And I'm probably going to put out a full review at some point. But anyway, go let me know in the comments what the last great movie was that you watched. Welcome to the channel. And I'll see you all next time.